All right. Hello, everyone. I am here with CL Clark. Hi, CL.
Howdy.
Um, Joining us from London, England, which we're going to get into. Um, I'm going to read your bio because I think it's fun. So
Awesome.
this is the bio I was sent by Grimdark Magazine, who published CL's latest novella, which I have here behind me, Fortune's Wake. All right, CL Clark, you just have to sit here and listen to this. CL Clark, dubbed the patron saint of sword lesbians by Reactor Magazine, is a BFA award-winning editor and the Nebula-nominated author of a few essays, several short stories, and a handful of books, including the Magic of the Lost trilogy, the novellas Fate's Bane and Fortune's Wake, which I have here behind me, and the arcane novel Ambessa, Chosen of the Wolf. When they're not imagining the fall of empires, they're trying not to throw their kettlebells through walls. I thought that was a pretty badass intro. I don't know if you wrote that or if they wrote that for you.
No, I mean, I wrote that, so I can't, I mean, I can take credit for it, but it is, I put myself in my best light.
I love it. Well, let's get into it. I was really excited to chat with you. We will get into Fortune's Wake, which I had the opportunity to read and enjoyed. But I want to start by talking about you and who you are. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about growing up and where you're from and how you first got into writing.
So I am from Kansas City, Kansas, and lived there for most of my life, or at least in the same general region of Kansas City. And then in, and I like all of my family is from that area, more or less. And I think I moved to England for the first time in high school and finished high school there at an international school and then went back to Kansas for undergrad. And I was in the States for a while, undergrad in Kansas at KU, and then went to IU for grad school. In between, then I was a personal trainer for a couple of years. And all of that time, I was definitely writing. Like I knew I wanted to be a writer when I don't know, like I was in probably third grade or something like that. Because I loved reading, and my mom would write poetry and little fun like kid stories, as well as like actual adult poetry and stuff. And I think somewhere in there, I was really into R.L. Stein, and so I started telling my cousins ghost stories when we'd go on really long car rides. And to be honest, those were probably the first stories I ever started telling. And then I got really into fantasy. I think Wheel of Time was one of my early gateway drugs, as well as the Drizzt Do'Urden series, R.A. Salvatore. And yeah, that was the beginning of the end. So my very, very, very first novel that I ever tried to write was a knockoff of Wheel of Time.
Huh.
Absolutely, down to the naming conventions. So
So you wrote 17 books and then you had Brandon Sanderson come in and finish it out for you.
yep.
Yeah.
I was just like, you know what, buddy, Brandon, I'm done. If you could just take care of it, you know, I could do it
Yeah.
great. I just,
Yeah,
I'm tired. Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. I had the opportunity to meet R.L. Stein 2 years ago. He's still kicking it, and he is as awesome as you think he would be, which rarely happens. It's always
Yeah.
nice when you meet one
Yeah.
of your heroes and they're just as charming and hilarious as you think they're going to be. Um,
That's really nice. That's nice to hear. That's
yeah,
really
yeah.
nice to hear.
He's still in Ohio, still writing. Um,
Mhm.
that's awesome. And so you're a Jayhawk. Did you study English?
I studied English and French and very
Okay.
briefly exercise science, but then I realized that the job I wanted at the time, I didn't want to do physical therapy anymore because I went in as a dual major in physical therapy and journalism, realized I didn't want to do either of those jobs, swapped for English and French, and got my cert in personal training, and so that's how I earned money throughout after college and stuff, and then somewhere in there, I realized if I was going to hustle the way you have to hustle for any kind of freelance job, like personal training or writing, I said I'm going to put the energy into writing. So that's what I did. That's why I'm here now.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people who start out writing, the dream of being a full-time writer can seem like an impossible dream.
Mhm.
Did you have those feelings at all, or did you always know I'm going to do it no matter what?
Oh, I knew that I was gonna work and do whatever I did to get my books published. I did not I think I did enough research early on to just figure out how to publish things that I knew working as a full-time writer is very, very, very difficult to achieve, especially in the States, because at the time I thought that that's where I was going to end up living. And the deal with health insurance and stuff was never like that was it is so tremendously hard to be a full-time writer in that kind of situation. But then, and that's also, I think, part of the reason I was interested in going to grad school because I wasn't sure if it was going to be an MFA in creative writing or if I was going to get my master's in library sciences. Um, and I think it was sometime after that personal training decision, I was like, all right, it's going to be one of these two jobs. And so I started applying for um, both kinds of school. And I got a yes from a fiction program. And so I went there, and that was kind of where my life diverged. I could have been a librarian, and I still would have been writing, but I would have been writing from a library position instead.
Well,
Um,
you still could
yeah,
be. There's still time.
I could, yeah, yeah.
Um, that's awesome. And um, what what do you? Because I know you teach as well.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think is the best piece of writing advice you've ever received that you like to impart to the students that you work with?
Oh, what I like to impart. I so mm, one of the best things I ever received, and I do, I think, tell my students this in my own way, but it was actually when I was applying to grad schools. I had a teacher who, because in college, people they respect a certain kind of fiction. You know what I'm saying? And I knew that I wanted to write fantasy, but I'd also spent time on the lit fic side. So I knew I could do it. It was what I was kind of trained to do in the program, even in undergrad. When I tried to send in a little fantasy story, there was a teacher who was like, okay, cool, but next time give me a little something more realistic. Um, and see, and I remember that verbatim, which is why you could tell it had an impact on me. um, but then later on, a few years later, because that was like probably my freshman year, and then I was applying, and so I was talking to a different professor, a playwright, and he had no reason because he was a playwright. Like he has no reason whatsoever to be into my little fantasy stuff. But he was like, "Look, if you're going to apply to these schools, apply as you really are, because if they tell you yes and it's for a lie, you won't be happy and they'll be confused when you get there. But if they reject who you are, then you know that you're not supposed to be there." So I applied to the school that I got into. I applied with one lit fic story and the chapter of the novel that became The Unbroken, and they took me. They accepted me with both of those stories, and I thought it was like, this is a perfect sign. This is because I want to be all of this. And he was the one who said, be yourself and let them hate you for who you are or let them love you for who you are. And so that is some of the best advice I've ever gotten. But what I tell people or find myself telling my students most often is to have fun, which to me does translate to the same thing. If you're not having fun, then you're not doing the work that you need to be doing creatively. And they'll very often apologize for this or that. I'm like, why are you apologizing? If this is what you want to write, this is what you want to write. It doesn't matter if I like it. Like if it's not my genre or whatever. Like that's not my job. My job is to help you do the thing that you like doing. So, yeah, if it's not fun, don't do it. Do something else. And that can go to like all of writing as well. Like,
That's great advice. Probably goes to all of life in general.
yeah,
That's
I mean,
awesome.
you gotta do like work and stuff,
Sure.
but when it comes to your actual enjoyment, like don't do the thing that someone else tells you to be doing for fun. Do what's
Mm.
actually good for you. Yeah.
What have you found about writing in England versus
Mm.
writing in the United States? Is there a difference in the job of writing in either of those two places, or is there a difference in the inspiration you get from either of those two places? Like, what are the main differences in writing in each of those places?
My actual day-to-day writing life, not so much a difference. But as a fantasy writer and a kid who loved fantasy books, being around castles is pretty awesome. I could just, I could drive on a trip to go see a castle or go to the Tower of London, which is not far from where I actually live. And so that's pretty awesome, to be honest. And we also have relatively easy to access armories, so I can go look at different medieval to Renaissance weaponry and stuff. I also, while this, I think there are definitely more historical European martial arts HEMA type classes sprouting up in the States, and there might even be one in my old hometown. There are a lot of sword places to study and play at in my environment now in London. So I didn't actually start doing sword play until I got here, just because there were so many and it was easier to access. And also I had disposable income because I was an adult and not a child. Right. But that's the inspiration portion. And I think practically, I do think that there is a difference in terms of literary style, but that's more of a bigger national, international picture. And I don't know that I've actually thought about it in terms of fantasy and stuff that I see, just because the fantasy market is very American, even if you're publishing in the UK. And so I think the influences are very American, but I think it will be actually a really cool study to see what American genre writers are like versus non-American, which because it's a very wide range. So we've got Australian fantasy writers, we've got English and Scottish and Irish, and they're all different. So not to mention people who are writing in mainland Europe but in English and stuff. So I think that I'm sure there's something about individualism versus like there's something there that would help you tell who's from where a little bit.
Sure. I think there's probably also an era thing as well, because I think of, like Roald Dahl, fantasy, right? But a very different type of fantasy than some of the more modern British writers. And there's
definitely.
or Tolkien, right? That's a big one, obviously. But yeah, I think that's so interesting. You mentioned sword play and a lot of the martial arts that sort of came out of the medieval tradition. And I love that you mentioned it so casually, like everybody casually studies sword play, which totally isn't true. And I have to hear more about it now. Do you practice martial arts
I mean, I do long sword and side sword primarily. All my goodies are in the corner. I was going to see if they're not quite, I can't quite bring them in frame, but so I've been doing historical European martial arts for, I think, coming on 5 years. Now, that does not necessarily mean I'm like really good, but I'm having a lot of fun. And so it's research. It's research.
Tax deductible research.
Yeah. But I actually, technically, I do use it for marketing purposes sometimes. So it's it works. It works. But mostly it's something I always wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to be the hero, swing the sword and chop the bad guys and stuff. And while my motivations have become a bit more nuanced as an adult, the basic principles are the same. So
I think I used the word badass when I read your bio, and I'm going to use it again. That's so cool. What is something that you've learned in the past half decade of practice that you've been able to bring to your writing?
Most of the fight scenes that involve swords or even like certain grappling moves I've worked them out either by myself or with friends, willing or unwilling. So I've learned how to actually choreograph a bit. And so I'm not like an expert like Christian or Miles Cameron, like his stuff. Like he is a like an instructor, like an instructor caliber
Oh, wow.
swordsman.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, definitely. I watch his videos for my own research, for writing and for studying swordplay, because
Cool.
that's how good he is. And but I so my battle scenes, fight scenes are choreographed from my own work, but I'm not an expert, just having fun. And I can tell if I read a book and I'm like, that sword's not going to work that way. That sword doesn't, that's too light or it's too heavy. Or when someone's like, oh, his sword was so heavy, I'm like, well, why? It's just a sword. They don't really weigh more than a few pounds. It's just what you're doing with it. So
Yeah,
it's fun to have that secret knowledge, but
that's so cool. I noticed that actually when I was reading, there's a realism to your fight scenes. I'm specifically thinking right now of there's the one on the beach. And you know, it's always interesting. I mean, I love I do love an unrealistic fight scene, right? Like where the good guy takes down
just
like
pow, 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 pow.
37 bad
Yeah.
guys, right? But I used to wrestle. Probably don't have the breadth of experience that you do with weaponry, but you can't, it doesn't work, right? Like,
You can only
going,
wrestle so many people at
you
one
can only
time.
wrestle so many people at one time. Size makes a huge difference, even if you're very skilled. And so, yeah, there's so many details and nuances that when you actually get into the reality of a fight scene, it is not always as glamorous and I guess way grittier, way more grimdark, if you will. Shout out Grimdark magazine. But yeah, that is something that I noticed in this book, so that's really interesting to hear. Was there? Let's talk about the book for a minute. So, Fortune's Wake. Here we go. It is out right now. Is that correct? Or
August
we could do a little
24th. Yeah.
book high five.
Zoom. Pew.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm
and
late.
yeah. um, what inspired this particular story?
So the origin story for the book is this solo or small group RPG called Iron Sworn. And I was burnt out and I was supposed to not be writing anything, but I really still wanted to play with a story of some sort. So I started playing this RPG by myself. And as I was building the character out, I started with my kind of usual type of character, which is like I wanted a grizzled fighter woman who knew what was what. And then I was just thinking, well, you've done this character kind of before. We've seen her, but I really would be interested in how she became this. And so I regressed her stats and tried to think what's like if she's not really proficient at all of your usual fighty type stats, like she's got a lower strength or a lower dexterity or whatever would indicate a narrative prowess, what would she have instead? And I already, the old veteran woman was supposed to be like her big overall goal was to earn her fortune so she could go back and marry her sweetheart. But it'd been like, few dozen years at this point, and she still hadn't earned enough money to say that she'd like done what she had set out to do. And then I was like, all right, well, if she's going to make that kind of an oath as a kid, then it's going to be all of her charm and interpersonal stats that will be higher. So that's how I started this kid. And so she's Kova in Fortune's Wake is a very hopeful, idealistic, kind of heart on her sleeve kind of character, but she's also got a lot of inner conflict, inner turbulence as she's trying to figure out who she is. So even those high stat aspects of herself are in flux. We can see that fluctuation happening, the beginning of that shift. So we're losing the high charisma type character, and we're getting some of the martial prowess stuff. But that's kind of how it started. And then I got the invitation to pitch Grimdark Magazine for a novella, and I thought, this story is about novella sized, or it could be novella sized. And so I turned that gameplay into an outline. I built my own world instead of the game world, and kind of went from there.
Cool. So you started with a character, it sounds like. Is that your normal process? Is that normally where you start?
I start with world and character kind of at the same time. And I guess technically I did have something of a world in place. It just took more shape, got a little bit more individualized over time. But for me, it's always the world and the character should be inseparable. And so the character, if I have a cool idea for a character, then I'm like, okay, well, what kind of world would have made them this way? Or I have a cool idea for some kind of magic or some world system. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, who is going to be the most impacted by this system? And I start imagining the different characters at all the different strata of like the powerful, the disenfranchised, the rando who's just trying to like sell cabbages and make it through the day. So seeing where everybody lands, and then I can populate the story that way. But my ultimate goal is to make it so that none of the characters could be put in any other story and still work. And also to build a world that is so real that the characters suggest themselves. Like I could just build this world and then it starts ticking along without me, essentially. That's the goal, that it feels that real.
Is this a world that you intend to come back to for other projects, or was this kind of a one and done for the novella?
In my heart, I definitely want to still write that one novel. Like I know I know what her last adventure is for this character, and the oath to, go back and meet her sweetheart is still there. It's just, if you finish the book, you know that it's probably not quite in the same way as I had envisioned with this hopeful, oh, we're going to go back and get married. Now maybe the oath is a little bit different, with a little bit more grayness involved. So I'm excited for the reunion, whenever that happens. I don't know when it's going to happen. But I would also like to write a few more adventures, novella sized, with Kova and Sayre, to the point where we get Kova as this apprentice monster slayer to kind of graduating apprenticeship to I am a full monster slayer now, and getting that handoff from Sayre. That would be ideal.
Cool. Are you generally a plotter, or are you a pantser, or are you somewhere in between, or something totally different?
I am mostly a plotter, in that I do like to have some ideas about where I'm going and what I'm getting into. I am not militant about it, but after an amount of brainstorming, I generally will start trying to do something to get the general idea of a trajectory, I pretty much pantsed completely the Unbroken the very first draft. Ouch. Took me many years to revise that, figure out what I was doing. And after that, I think I was so traumatized that I outlined everything. But I was working on deadlines for the first time. And so I needed something that I could hang my hat on essentially as I moved forward. And the outlines would often go through massive changes and stuff. I think The Sovereign maybe was a pretty clean outline, but that was just because it was the last book in a trilogy. I just knew these things have to happen. And it still got rewritten top to bottom just in terms of character motivations and stuff. And then there was the IP Ambessa, which needed to be outlined very strictly. And my other novella was just, that story just came to mind kind of as it was. So I wrote that outline as well. And then when I came to Warbongers, which is the standalone I'm working on, I was so tired that I said, I wrote this outline to sell the book, but I hate that outline. So I just started playing with my story engine cards and rebuilding the world. I had no idea what I was going to do with the story because I didn't like the last one. And it was just me playing with the maps that I had made and saying, well, I made all these cool places. So let's figure out what happens if we go to them. And started building some new gods. And so that one was definitely a bit of world building came, but I also had the two characters that I knew I was going to keep, and just kind of they fed off of each other until I was finally in a stage that felt healthy enough to start outlining a little bit. But most of that just kind of got free written, a little bit pantsed, a little tiny bit outlined, but yeah. But now I'm revising that, so we'll see.
Switching it up again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did my MFA, and I always said that my MFA taught me how to write, but it didn't necessarily teach me how to be a writer. And I think the craft of writing and the business of writing are two very different things. And I've met a lot of fantastic writers who are not writing professionals because there is a difference between being a good writer and being a writer who can sell work. What would you say on the business side is something that you've learned that you take to heart, or what does it take to be a full-time writer that you didn't necessarily expect when you were first starting to write and focused more on the creative elements of a story?
I can only speak from the genre side of things, but I imagine that there is an amount of crossover with the lit fic side.
Sure.
Just because I say that because I know my lit fic friends, they write like one book every 5 years.
Yeah.
And we're out of a job if we don't write at least a book a year. So there's got to be some difference in, but I think honestly that would be one of the things that I was kind of surprised by was the expectation that you're writing a book every year, and how that doesn't actually, like, that's very hard to maintain. And I know I've mentioned this on other talks because I'm talking with a lot of indie writers these days, and I've seen, like, I've seen indie writers in the same, because we share the same space, right? And I'm like, how many books did you publish this year?
It's even more.
And yeah, I'm lucky. Like, I can't keep up with the TradPub book a year requirement. So my books have come out every other year, and the novellas slip in between, but I can't keep up with that. So I have learned that, and this is, again, it's hard to make it work in practice because you need, as with just writing full-time anyway, you need a certain amount of financial cushion because of the way advance schemes work, which is another thing that I've learned in the business side of writing. That it would probably really be nice for me to write multiple books in my series first and then start publishing that series after a couple are written. So I build up a little bit of I don't know, like a speed bump, like a ramp, so that my first and second books can be coming out while the third book is being written, for example. And so I'm not having these massive gaps where people are like, oh, I totally forgot the first book in your series, so I'm not going to pick up the second or the
Mm.
third or something like that. But I'd have to be able to handle not being paid for however those like couple of years it takes to write the books, edit the books, and then publish the books, and then have the actual payments come in. So it's a trade-off in that sense. And so what I've learned from the business of writing is that everything is a trade-off.
Yeah, you mentioned the advance schemes, royalty
Mhm,
schemes.
mhm,
And I think what a lot of newer writers don't always realize is that an advance, when they sell a book, is an advance against royalties. So if you
mhm,
sell a book for 50K or 100K, you don't
mhm.
make any
You don't get any
royalties.
more money until if you sell through that, which I mean, the publisher will make money, enough money to not necessarily consider you a waste of money, even if you
Sure.
don't earn out that advance. But they could still use it as an excuse to not publish you again or to lower your next advance and so off. So it could be trade-offs, you know.
Trade-offs.
Um, because if your advance is big enough, like, some folks out there are getting like 300 per book. Like, I'm like, fine, give it to me. I don't care if I never
Sure.
earn out. I will take the money. um, but yeah, so it depends, I guess, on where you want to stack your risk, I guess.
Sure. That's really interesting. I think what you brought up around
Mhm,
the cadence of writing is something when
mhm,
people are trying to make that choice. Do I want to go indie? Do I want to go trad? Do I want to go genre fiction versus literary fiction? Um,
mhm,
Cadence isn't something I think of a ton of people consider, but
mhm.
can you write two, three, four books a year? Okay, if you can, maybe indie is a better fit in the long run.
Yeah,
Or
if
are
you
you
can do
the
it,
yeah,
yeah.
I think Susanna Clark famously spent what 40 years writing Jonathan Strange and
Jonathan Strange,
Mr.
yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Norrell,
Mhm,
uh, another great British fantasy writer. But
mhm.
one book every 40 years, that does not have indie written on it. That's trad pub all the way.
Yeah, 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 and I mean, but, I don't even know, I could not even dream to imagine how much money she's made off of that one book, let alone
Right.
Piranesi, like,
Which was terrific. I loved that
uh,
book.
yeah,
I think she
so
she famously got $1 million advance for um, the first one for John, and the book wasn't even done yet. But I think she's probably earned
she's
that
earned
back in
out, she's
royalties. Yeah, I
yeah.
think. Um, yeah, if you can write a book as awesome as that, um, Trad Pub, take
Yeah,
40 years. Yeah, take 50
yeah,
years.
yeah.
Um,
You only need to do it one time.
That's right. Speaking of other awesome authors, you
Mhm,
mentioned R.L. Stein and R.A.
mhm,
Salvatore as
mhm,
two of your inspirations. Who
mhm.
are some of the contemporaries that you are reading that you are really enjoying?
Yeah. So it's gonna be pure recency bias because I just have forgotten every book I've ever read. So I just finished Christopher Buehlman's Thrice Bound Fool, which has literally been sitting right next to me as a kind of like mini shrine that I like to keep books that inspire me on my desk so that whenever writing sucks, I can just sort of flip through and be like, ah, yes, this is what we can do. Um, so that one was there. And I actually had all three of the Black Tongue Thief books right next to me for a while. Um, and then The Traitor Baru Cormorant by Seth Dickinson is always one of my favorites. But I'm reading right now Ian Green's The Deep and the Drowned. And
Mm,
um, The best way I could describe it is that it made me feel like I was reading Live Ship Traders, Robin Hobb's Live Ship Traders again, and I love that trilogy. I'm relatively new to Robin Hobb. Like I never read it when I was a kid, so I've been
Mm.
savoring each book in each trilogy very slowly. And I obviously I passed the Live Ship Traders, and I was like, damn, I'm never going to do that again. But now I'm like, oh, hey, this is really great. Um, so if you're into ships, and I'm like halfway through it right now, but if you're into ships and really there's a dueling sibling kind of book.
This platform loves dueling siblings. Yeah, I don't know why that
Yay!
happens.
Celebrate dueling siblings. So I'm excited. I'm like I said, I'm only halfway, so I don't know how the siblings are going to crash together or what, but it's the beginning of a trilogy and I'm enjoying it. So that's my in progress contemporary read. Um, Enjoying right now.
Amazing. I didn't want to incept you, so I did not say the name Christopher Buehlman, but the author of Galva, um,
Yes. Ugh.
and and I don't want to spoiler your book, but I think if people really connected with Galva, there is a character in Fortune's Wake that I found myself connecting with and thinking of Galva when I was reading your book. And I didn't know if that was another author you'd read, or if that
Mhm,
was
mhm.
somebody you were thinking of in your own head when you were creating one of your characters.
Yeah, I think from the minute I met Galva on the page, I was like, this is a woman for me. And so, to be honest, I think a lot of my characters were already kind of like her, and that's part of why I
Mm,
gravitated toward her. But it's one of those things like influences, they go in and they go out. So you see something that speaks to you, and then you grab it and you carry it back along with all the other kind of magpie things, because there's a similar character in the Trader Bard Cormorant, Tang Hugh. And so I have a type. I have a type. And yeah, so
that's
mhm.
awesome. Um,
Galva, my love.
yes, I see some really fun things behind you. They kind of remind me of. Did you ever read "Steal Like an Artist" by Austin
No,
Kleon?
those are his. Those are his.
Those are okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
And you're it's
yeah.
funny you're
I've got a
talking
whole
about
stack. Yeah.
the
Uh-huh.
magpie, like
Hmm.
taking things.
Hmm.
Oh, that's great. So that is where those come from. Thought they looked
Yeah.
familiar. Are those some of the ones that uh, have spoken to you most? Is that why they're behind you,
Hmm.
or were those luck of the draw?
It's a bit of both, because these were some of, like, I think he at one point on his newsletter, I subscribed to his newsletter, and he
Yeah.
posted several different little mini posters that he like of writerly inspiration. And sometimes I'm like, I could use a little writerly inspiration. So I printed out these that spoke to me. And for people who can't read them, one says, it doesn't have to be good, it just has to exist. The other says, apply ass to chair. The other says, open the document, stay in the document, trying to hypnotize me to stay there. And then the other one says, if it's shit, so what? Or so what if it's shit? Um, and it's got little poops on the side. So,
That's funny. And I
mhm,
think one of the things that I love about Austin Kleon's work and that I took away from that is
mhm.
just finish the project.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
finish it.
yeah.
You're gonna have
Mhm,
another project. If you've got the bug, it doesn't go away unless you let it go away, right? So
yeah.
just finish the project, do the best you can, get it out into the world, take what
Mhm.
feedback is relevant to you, and do the
Leave
next one.
everything else and go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember actually when I first found it, I was like, uh, this doesn't really, it seems too simple for me as an artist. Like I know all this stuff already, but then even reading it, I feel like, yes, I technically know these things. I know all of these things. I never have to read any of these books ever and yet I just took such great comfort from them. And the way he says them also makes them feel a bit new or more digestible than me berating myself the thing. And also sometimes you do just need a reminder, like, oh yeah, I don't have to take this so seriously. Like the newest book, Don't Call It Art, is all about, you know, making art like a kid again. And as I've been revising this latest novel, you know, it's a revision. It feels like I have to be so smart and it has to be so good. And it's like, no, you just have to make it cool. Make it cool. Like, make it something that Galva would be proud of or proud to be in. Or and like, yeah, that would be the best thing. And so it's been kind of like that kind of reminder. So if you guys are making art out there, grab one of his books.
And that is Austin Kleon. I think he's based
In
in
Austin.
Austin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first book we were talking about was Steal Like an Artist. And then I haven't
Mhm.
read the newest one, Don't Call It Art, but
Mhm.
that sounds fun and kind of brings us full circle because I think we started this conversation talking about some of the best writing advice you've received or writing advice that you like to pass on to the students that you work with. And I think
Mhm.
have fun is another
Yeah.
way of
Yeah.
saying don't call it art.
Don't call it art. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love it when a plan comes together. So it's almost like we planned this.
Totally planned that.
Well, this has been so much fun. I really, really appreciate your time. Is there
Mhm.
anything you want to tell us about your own work? Anything you have
Mhm.
coming out where people can find you? Let's split those up, actually. What are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm working on a standalone called Warmongers, which is the next full-length novel that will come out probably in 2028. It is about two battle buddies turned lovers turned enemies when one betrays the other, and then the present day timeline is one of them has become king, and the other one is trying to kill the king. So it is a
Whoa.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I think it's really great. I think it's fun. But I also have a short novella coming out next year, in theory, about a fell runner who is running through the mountains to save her town from being destroyed by an empire. If she doesn't, the towns will be destroyed. But if she does, the whole fellscape might be destroyed instead. So
Hmm. Pretty low stakes, it sounds like.
yeah,
Um,
it's only yeah, nothing too big. Nothing too big.
Amazing. Well, that's great. That'll give us something to tide us over until 2028 when the novel comes out.
Mhm.
And if you need something else, of course, Fortune's Wake, which is right behind me here, it just came out. And where can people find that? That's
That
online. That's
should be anywhere you can find a bookstore. If you want to get it from your local and for some reason you can't see it on their website or their shelves, you can just request it in. I think if you're in the US or UK, bookshop.org should have
yep.
it. Definitely Amazon has it. Um, Whatever most updated links that I can find will be on my website, which is clclarkwrites.com. And you can also find my newsletter there, any extra goodies, excerpts, behind the scenes, that kind of stuff should be there.
Cool. Social. So you're on social.
Oh, I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky and sort of Twitter. Instagram and Blue Sky should be under CL Clark Writes, and that should be it. Yeah, Blue Sky has
Cool.
the extra Blue Sky stuff on it, but you know.
Any last minute things we didn't cover that you wanted to mention or discuss?
No, just have fun, guys. Have fun.
It's have fun. I say
Yeah.
it every day and then I forget it every day and I have to remind myself every day. Have fun.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, CL, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for Fortune's Wake. And I
Thank
hope
you.
we will connect soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.